We're ready for you, Rick.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Council. I would like to share my screen with you, and would like to do a follow-up on the ARP initiatives, the American Rescue Plan initiatives and priorities that exercise that Council went through in the last few weeks. We have begun the process of acting on the highest Council priority, which is the individual economic relief payment. That was the resolution approved this morning, 2,000 to be distributed on July 16th. And I was hoping that today I could briefly walk Council through the rank order of the priorities that we have previously gone through with Council, in the weights that they fell out in, and also ask if there are any additions or any other items that have potentially risen to a higher priority level for any of the Council members, and ultimately would like to get Council direction on which of these or potentially all of them that we can start working on implementing. So I will start by going through the results of the ranking that Council went through. I already mentioned the first one, the individual economic relief payment. Second one was general assistance to families and households that to some degree is addressed by the individual economic relief payment, but there was a distinction in that there was a concern or at least some comments brought up that there are increases in some of the goods and just basic necessities that we all have to use or purchase to survive, and whether or not there is a need for a different kind of a pool for that. Next on the list was mental health services, providing activities that encourage or support healthy community engagement. Kind of just generally, I think, addressing the mental health concerns that have resulted from the pandemic. After that, it was family drug court or wellness court. Next, a little bit more specific initiative related to homeowners and the water and sewer system issues that plague them, that there's currently a potential gap in which of our government programs might be able to support them, meaning that housing these aren't housing homes, or generally the individual homeowners have less access to the types of programs that we provide. Very similar to that is assistance on roofs, flooring, and then kind of transitioning into a payment or some kind of a assistance to address the homelessness issue. Specifically here, there was an idea of partnering with the Housing Authority for, I guess, either developing or improving the two home sites that are listed there, or building additional housing. After that was premium pay for those workers that were deemed essential during the pandemic. Next, additional supportive housing projects similar to the Morningstar, an inpatient treatment center, community gyms or general opportunities for youth engagement in the community, as well as child care center capacity increases. Next, investing in underfunded or low-income schools. After that was business owner assistance, and the idea put out was small business assistance grant program or something like it, similar to what we did for the CARES Act. Next is kind of a general desire with some specifics included about how to address the health disparity among tribal populations, specifically fresh produce and physical activities on the reservation. After that was fiber infrastructure. Specifically here, we were talking about the potential for fiber ring build out. And next was larger, not individual homeowner or home site, but more community-based water and sewer infrastructure systems. After that was COVID safety issues, things like PPE, funding to support adjusted work schedules, teleworking, those sorts of activities. After that was a general industry specific economic development focus, meaning, and this ties to one of the categories under the American Rescue Plan, which is revitalizing or sort of re-energizing the economic sectors that were most heavily hit by the pandemic, tourism being one of them. And give me 1 second. I need to find out which one that was. Help. Oh, so this one here, priority 18, is to help improve public access to services and programs. That falls under the ARP category of rebuilding public sector capacity, which generally under the Act means replacing lost workers or replacing the services that needed to be discontinued or were somehow hampered as a result of the pandemic. And 19 was replacing tribal revenues. This is the portion of the American Rescue Plan that allows for us as a tribal government to offset revenues that decreased as a result of the pandemic. And finally was using it for payroll and benefits expenses for healthcare and other COVID related workers. Any questions or comments on that?
Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I was just thinking that there's a couple of them that could probably fit together in my mind, but I don't know if that's the case with other council members. Like I put 5, 6, and 11 together, but the mental health part of it, I don't know if council's thinking probably overall mental health of all people, but there's so many mental health issues in the recovery community. So I'm not sure which one, or if it's both.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Charmel.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same space or similar space as that comment as far as, I guess when I look at the categories that we were asked to prioritize, it was difficult. I said this before, it was difficult to separate some of them because they seem to all be similar. And when I look at this chart, for example, what I see is number 1 and number 2. When I was doing my rating, I had a hard time understanding those as different things, but and then as well, a lot of the categories that would put funds into our membership's hands to address some of those things that they need assistance with, again, is kind of overall relief type stuff. So I don't know how they got broken out like they did, other than maybe just trying to further define the ARP categories so that we could be more specific. So I'm not sure how to view this going forward after we've taken care of the relief payment. If there's another recommendation that might come forward from Rick and his staff about, how do we declare then, or are we just breaking this down and taking our top 5 and saying it's all kind of interrelated? Because I feel like, there are some other things on this list that could be elevated a little bit because they're somewhat different. You know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of looking for a way to understand the best path forward at this point. Thank you.
Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Carol and Charmel, you're absolutely right. What came out as a theme from essentially what was a brainstorming session with council, and we just wrote down all of the comments, and some of them probably could have been combined, but we didn't want to, in as much as possible, take our words and replace them with the council's, but there are definitely themes. The first 2 priorities they're not very dissimilar. And the same thing as you pointed out, Carol, the mental health services, family drug court, and inpatient treatment center, and you might even be able to throw supportive housing into that same category. So one potential way that we could move forward with this is if council wants to take, based on looking at this, provide as a priority a general theme instead of a specific line, with maybe some just direction in terms of when we say mental health, for example, what we're really hoping you can do is address, well, I guess if there is any specificity that you can provide, we can then take that and start working on how to implement or address those issues. In essence, I guess this exercise is as useful as it can be or needs to be to you, but we don't have to go with number 2 and find a way to distinguish between it and the individual economic relief payment. One of the things that I would like to share that might be helpful in this discussion is and this is a document that Ryan Rushi put together yesterday after a conversation he and I had, and as a result of some of these similar types of questions from council. Essentially, how can we help you? How can we do two things? Get out of your way and let you tell us what you want us to work on without coming across as if we're spoon feeding you or in any way trying to tell you what should or shouldn't be done, but also to help council make it clear what the expectations or what the direction that they want the staff to go are. And so this is a template resolution that Ryan put together, similar to the one that Councilwoman Gillen had brought forth a while ago related to the treatment center options. And in this way, I think any of those big issues can be defined or not defined, and ultimately through a resolution we can use that as our sort of official marching orders from council to the staff to make certain things a priority. So in this example, Ryan used homelessness, and it does a couple things. One, it clarifies kind of what the general issue is, why it's important, and this whereas clause here starts to determine the direction. So homelessness is an issue, and council has a desire to, in this case, eradicate it. So very clear, no homelessness would be the ultimate goal here. And then it directs the staff to do that, authorizes the staff to direct all available staff and resources and take any actions that are within policy to pursue that, sets the reporting schedule, so there's sort of accountability built in, designates if council desires a council member to act as the sort of council point person or liaison for any of those discussions, meetings, decision points that don't require full council approval in that effort, in this case, to eradicate homelessness. And then basically through that, we have established priority, established direction or goal, accountability built in through the reporting period, and sort of a pre-approval for the staff to take the appropriate steps in terms of staff, resources, and budget. And obviously some of those things would need to come back to council for approval if there are budget modifications, for example, that need to be approved. And then kind of sets the stage for us to work on those things that you've designated as a priority. And since Ryan did prepare this, I will, now that he's here, I'll let him share anything. I just walked council through the resolution template.
Yeah, well, sorry to walk in after Rick had already done the explanation. It's not because I thought he was going to be boring or anything at all. But no, I think what this really grew out of is certainly sense some frustration with some of the ways we've been approaching, trying to walk through some of the changes, and particularly in the last couple of meetings that I've been in with you all. But just looking at my notes, there's like the homelessness thing was just an example, but it certainly came up like from almost everybody on the council on something in particular like that during the chairs meeting. I think Councilman Charlotte was talking about the heat and that sort of stuff, and others were talking about vacant units, and then somebody else mentioned, I think Councilman Matt said, they've got these homes that were former credit properties or whatever like that, and started thinking about the way we worked with the water settlement when I sort of came on board and Rhonda said, okay, go work on the federal ratification of the compact. Is really what happened is council said, go do this, and Rhonda said, okay, you're going to be the person that's going to go do this, and we developed this thing where we reported to council weekly. I know sometimes you got sick of me. I tried to give you a break once in a while and cut it short here and there, but you always kind of knew what was going on. You were updated on it, and there would be decision points along the way. Priority wise, do we want to do this? Does this have a negative impact on something else? That sort of thing. But we checked in, and then we didn't create a water compact department or program manager. We just sort of had this loose team, and I was able to pull resources in from natural resources and from all over the tribal organization. And so what I thought is, why couldn't we take that same model that we used to pass this major $2 billion initiative and use it to tackle one of your other priorities, like one of the priorities you've been talking about with ARPA, or more broadly organization wide. And I just threw homelessness into this resolution because, as I said, I kind of heard all of you talking about it through the discussions, through the priority planning discussions, but also in particular on issues that you wanted to get done. But I think drafted this in such a way that you could pass 5 or 6 resolutions like this, insert the priority in there, and then we could work within that space, come back, check in, that kind of thing. But and maybe not have a situation where we have difficulty like even starting the conversation, or so trying to cut through some of the data and information we've been throwing at you and say, okay, let's just tackle something. What do you want to tackle? You want it to be this first? Let's do it. So yeah. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Just delete it. We can go on.
Thoughts from council?
Madam Chair, I definitely like it. Thank you.
Martin?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and Rick and Ryan and all the work you guys put into this. And I guess my thought was kind of taking a look at the entire list again as council and realizing that now that we have a payment, then maybe readjust or look at the priorities as something like we talked about, something that could be sustainable. Supportive living isn't cheap, or supportive housing, I'm sorry, isn't cheap. These treatment facilities aren't cheap. So after kind of thinking about that, the one that popped out to me was fiber, a fiber ring. That would definitely, I believe it would make money, not guaranteed, of course. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. Our lists, I feel, were, I think some people, admittedly were a little unsure about which numbers were which. And I think that's why the third priority, I think, our second priority is very similar to the first one, which is helping out the membership, which we've done. So maybe that one bumps or changes. And then, really diving into these, I think even doing, one by one as a council, I think would be beneficial, because I think all of us individually have some idea of what these are, but maybe they're not specific to these things, and it just doesn't fit exactly with a number, so you bump it one. And I started doing that where I have like my bottom 10 are ones that I'm like, those could be top 5 if under different, but realizing where we're at and realizing that there's possible funding coming down the road if they can ever figure out the infrastructure plans. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. I don't feel like I don't feel like we need to rush by Friday to do this. I feel like we're in a pretty good place to just kind of really look at this and take a very critical, non-rushed, look at this and take, if we need to, an entire day of whatever. But I think that this, going forward, our next few decisions with funding this or infrastructure coming down the line can really benefit the tribes very long term. And that's kind of what I think about this. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Martin. Rick?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think that that's kind of the right approach as well, because, and that's why we wanted to provide the template that I showed, because I think we wanted to do it in a way that you guys could have a meeting, no staff involved, and produce something that then we could work on. We're happy to help, but really some of these big picture things, it's probably stuff that you need to just sit and chew on and have discussions just with council, or hear constituent concerns. And I agree. I think if there is no rush for the next thing, that's fine. We can kind of stay in a holding pattern. We do have 16 million kind of dedicated already, and we have 3 years to spend the remaining 22 and whatever we'll get in round 2 of the ARPA funds. But we also didn't want to tie it to a specific funding source, because I think kind of in the general scheme of priority setting, not having it tied to a specific funding source is helpful, and the resolution template is intended to do a couple things. One, give direction, but also sort of give the staff those orders, which we can then go get really potentially creative with how we use the different funding that we have available to meet the needs. And I was just gonna, and it also gives us some direction, like if we don't have funding, then we can then also prioritize where we go seek new funding. And I think that's long-term a really beneficial thing for the organization.
Mike?
Just to follow up on that, Ryan, do you see this as basically a resolution that sets objectives sort of in that OGSM methodology we're talking about? And then these objectives are actually bigger than ARPA or any funding sources. These are our main objectives. And then we move from those objectives saying, well, ARPA will pay some of this and do some of these things, and maybe something else will in each of those objectives. And so this would be a resolution to establish maybe a handful of separate objectives.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we were thinking on that front, that you could pass, a handful, half dozen, whatever of these, and they could be going on simultaneously. And if there's ever a conflict or a competing, if money's competing for 2 different priorities, then, during our reporting, we come in and talk about that, and council gives direction on it or what have you. Yeah, exactly like that. But the other point, I think Rick might have already made this, but just to reiterate, if he did, is wanted to just also kind of give a template so that you guys can have those discussions and not, avoid having us talk at you, and, you can actually, then just direct us without, I'm happy to come here. You can put a quarter in me any day, but I see your faces after lunch and how you get sick of hearing my wispy voice or whatever it is. I can't hear it, so I don't know what it sounds like.
No, I think this is a great tool, this resolution, to kind of, after we figure out our priorities as a council, then to just give you guys the marching orders and say, work your magic. I appreciate the work that went into this. And I think we have a lot of work to do, like Martin said, of sorting out the rest of our priorities are, you know, really taking a deeper dive into them, because I know when I filled out that form, it's like, oh, that was hard, you know, and I was thinking strictly ARPA funding. But if we're just thinking of our overall priorities as a council and then leave the funding to you guys to figure it out, then that kind of changes some of my priorities. You know, it really does, because I listed things what I thought was going to fit into ARPA, whereas some of like fiber, that's a huge priority for me, but I'm thinking, well, let's wait for the infrastructure bill. So I rated it accordingly on this sheet. So yeah, I think we could have another sit down, you know, and really not do it after lunch. Do it in the morning when we're all fresh, to really put some brain power to it. So appreciate that. Thank you, guys. Any other comments? Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
I suppose not so much a comment as possibilities, examples, kinds of things like full, meaningful, adequate employment in place of homelessness, or unlimited sovereignty as a target, an objective, some things like that.
I mean, part of it too is just, you know, thinking about like our, I mean, part of this was like a self-reflection for me as well. Like, how do I work? You know, how did we run the last team I worked on, you know, and so like kind of thinking about it in that context, okay, if you gave me a resolution like this, like how would I approach it? You know, put someone in charge and have, you know, a team, but not a formal little department with a budget that's going to have all these, you know, restrictions and constraints and stuff. I mean, freedom, but also at the same time, very strong accountability and connection back with leadership, so that you guys know exactly what's going on. You can, you know, deal with questions that come from constituents, that kind of stuff. You know, I mean, these things like, you know, homelessness, sustainable employment, I mean, that kind of stuff, I mean, they seem like these unattainable, huge goals that are impossible. But I mean, if you remember, they told us our water settlement was this unattainable, huge goal, and no one is even going to take us seriously. And that was just 5 years ago. So, you know, I mean, like, just thinking about like just the money side of the settlement. I mean, like I have to remind myself that $2 billion is 2,000 million, right? So, I mean, that's like it doesn't quite register. And so I think, and I think we've got staff out there, a lot of people that would be up for some challenges like this and would get inspired. And I think you'd see some really cool stuff happen around the complex and around the tribal organization. So, but the employment one would be, that's what you pick first, that'll be just as exciting. I didn't mean to put homelessness in there as I think this is what you should do. I just tried to reflect, that's what I heard the last meeting, but that might have been just because it was a Monday.
Yeah, and I think, but that is a good example, because we see it every single day. If it's not specifically homelessness, it's some collateral consequence or whatever. So I think that was a good example. And I like the analogy that you did with the, how you approach the water compact, because that makes it real for me, you know, that I lived through that experience of, you know, watching you accomplish that. So yeah, I think this is really helpful.
You know, I mean, maybe one of the things you guys maybe even don't know about that whole process is like, I mean, Rhonda gave me an incredible amount of freedom to work, but I mean, like, like, I touched base with her like 3 times a day, you know, like, so that was these constant, like, here's everything I just did in the last 3 hours kind of thing. So, I mean, a lot of that kind of stuff I would see getting built into that, but I don't think that needs to all, like, you don't need to be bogged down with all those details. You don't need to have a 45-page resolution that spells all that out, but some of that stuff is pretty critical. You know, you can't just be a free agent and do whatever you want and then come in and say, oh, that was somebody else's fault, you know. It's a two-way street, so.
Madam Chair,
Ed Charmel?
what I really like about this, I believe, is that it sets us up for real high efficiency through clear direction. And I like what Mike had to say, and I think that there's a place for that as well. And maybe with the Montana Policy Board type discussion, my connection might be poor right now. I apologize, but so I really like where we're headed here. I think that we can really be specific with some of these resolutions, giving latitude to our staff and getting reports from them. I really think that's good. I hope we can talk about research and policy development with the help of others as well, to kind of get into understanding our unemployment, understanding our homelessness, and building out some of those would help alleviate those issues as well. So I appreciate Mike's comments about those too. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for that. Were we gonna go over, I mean, was that it for today?
That's all that we wanted to cover. So I think I just want to make sure that we leave council with enough that you feel like you can, I guess, come back with questions or resolutions for us, whatever form that takes. And I do think one of the things that Ryan kind of touched on that is relevant to Charmel's question is using this homelessness one as an example. I mean, part of that is going to be, we're going to have to really do the work to figure out what the issue is, the scope of it, the causes of it. And so like homelessness eradication, you know, it might not take 40 years. I mean, we may never fully get there, but those things might take a while. And that's the other benefit of putting in a resolution form is then it carries forward, and it to some degree would need to be acted against for it to not maintain a priority status. So.
Yeah, I think I don't have anything else either, but just like closing comment wise, I just would say, like having sort of unrealistic, overly ambitious goals to be directed to work on that kind of thing has been some of the funnest things I've ever done in my life. So, so bring it, I guess, is what I'm saying. Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
I would just say amen to that. It really, I think, will ultimately help align the entire organization, because all the things I'm thinking that you're going to bring at us are things that are going to require multiple different departments, programs, and staff to accomplish.
Mike?
Madam Chair, I'd like to request that we schedule a special meeting and make a target of having at least 3 of these kind of resolutions come out of it.
How does July 7th look for everyone? That's a Wednesday? Okay, we'll plan on meeting July 7th, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock. What can you guys do? Okay, we'll go 9 o'clock. Okay, 9 o'clock, July 7th. What's up, Jen?
It's been scheduled to meet fairly early. I think we can probably leave by 9 and get here. It's just in Ronan.
All right, we'll have Jen set up a meeting for us. And how about if we set up a round table in the chambers here so we can be in a circle instead of up here? So I don't have to look through all this glass. So, okay, July 7th, 9 o'clock. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Mike.
why don't we ask sanitation and the health folks if we can take the glass down now?
You want me to do it right now?
Yeah, we don't need them. We can have them gone by the next time you meet.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, what's next on our agenda? Okay, we're ready. Are we skipping the marijuana discussion today? Okay, good afternoon. Gaming's information starts on page 43 in the packet. Troy?
Hey. Brian, you want to pick up from here? I'm getting my paperwork still. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of council. We're here for an update. We have met with Chair Matt and the tribe's legal department to really review a couple, 3 different items, and we wanted to come forward for a joint meeting with all the parties to just review where we're at today. The 3 topics I'll go over very briefly. An update on the legal review of the articles of organization, the subsidiaries concept also from a legal review standpoint, and the Big Arm Vita Trust and the Big Arm project in general. We'd like to review with everybody. First off, if we could start off with the legal review of our articles of organization. We came to the council at the beginning of May, and we actually got approval for the amendments pending legal review. And I believe Jordan has had the opportunity to review those proposed edits.
Yeah, if now would be a good time to jump in. Took a look at the proposed edits, and they're pretty simple, just updating some names and then allowing SNK Gaming to operate as a holding company to own, control, and manage other companies or future subsidiaries. I think this is taken sort of after the concept of SNK Electronics or Technology. And so, yep, I talked with Rhonda about this morning, and she said it's ultimately a council policy decision, but as far as legality, yeah, it would be legal.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Troy.
I just wanted to say that and I'm assuming the council recalls some of the reasons why we want to do this. Namely, there's been various situations where we've been excluded from certain grant opportunities or government programs due to the nature of the casino business, usually being excluded from programs that could be beneficial to us if we were able to have a holding company like this and have an SNK hospitality and an SNK gaming under a holding company model where we could at least benefit on portions of our company.
Madam Chair, I did.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
One more point to make is this would give SNK Gaming the authority to, but it's not, they'd still have to go through a separate process in order to actually make a subsidiary, which then my understanding would go to the secretary of the tribal council and go through review in that process.
So at this point, Madam Chair, we would just ask that we're able to accept the changes, change the dates because they're a little bit dated from April, and get that over to the tribal council for signature.
Are these the only changes, these two red lines?
I'll scroll up there. I'll start at the beginning. That'll make it a little easier. It just, the top would be the edit for the date that we would, the revisions would take place as a second amendment to the original one. And then after that is just the current listing of the tribal council members who serve as the members of the company. And then the bulk of these changes are right in here.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Len.
Is SK Gaming requesting a council action on this?
Clarification, the council already approved this on May 5th pending the legal review. And Jordan is confirming that I believe it's what we're doing is legal.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Charmel.
Thank you. First of all, I do recall some of the inspiration, and I appreciate the direction that the board is taking with this. I think, you know, there could be a lot of advantages to this kind of a formation. And I just wanted to clarify then, we would still have one board of directors for the holding company, and then each subsidiary, similar to SNK Technologies, would report through the same hierarchy structure. And then any subsidiary development, would that still come to shareholder for approval?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Charmel. Didn't mean to talk over you. Yes, correct. If, you know, if to say due to future growth, we decide there's another LLC, that would have to be approved by the shareholder or the shareholder representative, in this case, the tribal council.
Thank you. And we would still have the only share and no other ownership would be created, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if it's had legal review, and we've already approved it, then I guess we just give it our final blessing.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Martin.
just Brian or Troy looking, in the chat, Jordan said that you needed a comma after the future subsidiaries. So if you could just make sure they make that edit, please.
I can make that edit and get it over to.
Was that all the changes?
Yes, Madam
Yeah, and I
Chair.
think that's just like an Oxford comma, which I prefer. So yeah, that's it.
Ellie?
The extra commas right up in behind Pablo under Mike Dawson's name.
Oh,
And that's called an extra comma, I believe.
Jordan's got the jokes today.
I will get these final edits over to the council for signature then.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
The next item that we'd like to discuss is just the development of subsidiary companies. And I believe, again, this really went along the lines of having the concept go through a legal review to make sure what we intended to do was going to be legal. And I think Jordan's had an opportunity to look at the concepts that we proposed in developing subsidiaries. And I mean, it's my understanding that you find it to be a legal concept.
Yeah, Brian. So now I think the next step, if in order to develop a corporation, a subsidiary corporation, you guys would go ahead and draft like the articles of incorporation and other corporate documents, and then send those to the shareholder for their review, at which point they could ask for further review from that. But I think that's, yeah, something we haven't seen yet. So that's probably the next step.
In terms of, Madam Chair, in terms of like payroll and such, we have our CFO on, and I think she could, communicate that essentially really all it will entail is contacting our payroll company and having separate paychecks, SNK Hospitality, SNK Gaming, depending on where the employee is, and always keeping in mind that separation. So, which is essentially what we do at SKT as well.
Shelley, did you want to add anything?
No, I checked it out. The cost is minimal. Our accounting system can currently handle it, and so can our payroll system. So just a few minor changes and we can make it work.
Okay.
Madam Chair, along the lines of the subsidiaries, one of the concepts is to roll out smaller gaming operations or off-site gaming operations. And I believe in order to further that concept, we would need approval from the tribal council to submit or through the gaming commission to submit a notice of intent to license a facility. And that would allow us to work out any potential legal issues with the NIGC. We believe it's within the scope of IGRA. However, one of the recommendations from the regional director of Rapid City Division of the NIGC recommended that we submit for the notice of intent to license the facility and then answer any questions that may arise from that notice. One of the concepts that we would like to do would be to start that with a hot springs facility called the Barbershop. They have enough space in there. On the surface, it looks like it could work for an expansion into that area.
To be clear, it's not a barbershop.
Correct. but it would take the council action to approve the gaming commission or to approve a notice of intent to license the facility.
Len,
Yeah, if SK Gaming needs that, I would make the motion to approve their request to submit the letter of intent to the National Indian Gaming Commission.
okay, we have a motion by Len, second by Martin. Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Charmel, you're opposed? Carol is out of the room.
I'm sorry, my thumbs up was late. I'm in favor. I was trying to chat a question to you. Thank you.
Okay, motion approves unanimous with Carol. Carol left for the day, right? Okay. Okay,
I'll get that notice of intent typed up and sent to you, Shelley, for signature.
sounds good.
And the last topic we'd like to provide an update on is the Big Arm facility. And I think Jordan has a little bit of the status of the Fee to Trust application. But SNK Gaming is moving along to open that up, and the gaming piece of that, we're probably a few weeks out from actually being able to. We believe we have we've done some legal reviews again with the director of Rapid City for NIGC. So I think there's the Indian Lands opinion that we needed may have been secured through the NIGC correspondence when we originally requested to license that facility. So I think within a couple of weeks, we should be able to get that operation off the ground and moving in from a casino standpoint. So that's pretty positive in the sense of we're continuing to move forward on that project, and we should see it come to fruition here in the next couple of weeks. And along the lines from the Fee to Trust application, SNK Gaming provided the Tribe's legal department all the current listings of for the property, and then future listings of what we intend to use the property for. So when they submit their Fee to Trust application, they have the most current data and information available to them.
Sounds good. You guys are moving forward, leaps and bounds.
Day by day.
Lots going on the table. There's a lot going on.
Okay, any comments, questions from council?
I have a question for Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Troy.
If I could switch gears on you. As you know, we've also been investigating the West Polson project for a casino location. With that being said, we've asked around to various sources, and it looks like there would need to be an environmental assessment on that piece of land before you could even move forward with offering a lease site for us. And I guess our question is there any way council could advance that environmental, that NEPA to get it fast tracked if it's possible?
Zelda, can you answer what was provided in the report from Raven and the other firm?
Shelley, are you asking me?
Yeah, did we address that in the report?
Well, we were going to follow all the clearances, and we weren't asking for anything to be fast tracked, but that's something we can investigate. We haven't met with the board yet, We're en route right now. We're waiting for Brian. We'll be meeting with the city of Polson in about a half an hour or so. And then, yes, we'd like to meet with the board, but as far as the NEPA clearances, our consultants haven't addressed it.
Okay, thank you,
Just a,
Velda.
just a question on our part, that was all. You know, we know that's going to be required, so.
Okay, we can investigate that further. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lem.
All good news.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, see you guys. What's next, Jen? Okay. Looks like you're up first, Holly.
Good afternoon.
Let's wait. We
Let's
have a
see.
couple people that
Okay.
will be joining us here.
Let's see. Do you have our packet, our copies
What do you mean?
of our packet at all or no?
The agenda packet? Yep.
Okay. Do you want to see here? Just come sit here.
Okay, go ahead, Holly.
Okay, I just have one issue today. I was bringing back in the Glacier Bank request for that water line easement on the property above the marina in Polson. We visited with the bank some more, and they said whatever council wanted to do, they were willing to work with us on. So they withdrew their request for a waiver. They would still like to do that if you guys were open to that, but they're open to doing an appraisal or negotiated value also. And then if you guys remember, that property is in fee still. And so that does give us a little bit more flexibility where we don't have to follow all the BIA guidelines. Visited with legal about that, and yeah, they said it would be council's discretion. So I was just here to visit with you guys and ask questions and see if you guys wanted to move forward on that request and how we wanted to do that.
Len?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the council. Yeah, this is something that we need to resolve here as soon as possible. You know, in regards to our tribal lakeshore properties, I really am reluctant to approve any kind of encumbrance on those properties, especially if if it may or may not hold up the deed of trust application. You know, I think at this point I would really I want to work with Glacier Bank. I do, because what this project does is it just enhances water quality into our lake. And when it comes to these types of projects, I always think about what would it be like if it was the other way around, you know? Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I'd just like to interrupt. This is our land committee discussion stuff. There might be some money and everything else that gets brought up during this. So could we go into closed session, executive session?
Go out of regular into executive?